Hello, everybody. Today we will address one of the most underrated, probably, environmental issues. Human activities, we know, cause a lot of side effects. Think about air pollution, waste, or emissions. But there's another aspect of our way of living that is affecting our health and the environment. We're talking about noise. Today we're here with Eulalia Peris, expert on environmental noise for the European Environment Agency. Welcome, Eulalia.
Thank you.
Should we consider noise pollution a real problem for Europe?
Yes, indeed. Noise pollution affects the health and well-being of millions of people in Europe. And yeah, with the current data that we have, we estimate that at least 20% of Europeans are exposed to chronic noise levels that are harmful to health, which means that basically these levels are above the WHO recommendations. And that corresponds to more than 100 million people in Europe. So it is an important public health issue because it affects many, many people. And also, I can say that noise pollution does not only affect one or few countries or few cities, but it is really a generalized problem across Europe.
Noise pollution is a big thing in cities. What is the average decibel which people are exposed to?
So it depends on the area. In residential areas, maybe we generally find levels between 50, 55, 55, 60 decibels in average. Close to busy roads, the levels can be higher, for example, above 60, 65 decibels on average during the day. Just to put these numbers into context, the WHO recommends reducing noise levels below certain thresholds for different noise sources in order to protect health and well-being of the population. And for instance, for road traffic noise, they recommend to reduce levels below 53 decibels during the day and 45 decibels during the night. And as you can see, these thresholds are quite low compared with the noise levels that we see in the streets of our cities.
And are there some places in Europe where silence still resists?
So, yeah, there are still some areas that are quiet. For example, inside cities, we can find parks. And some areas that are not affected, for example, by noise from transport, let's say. Although maybe these areas are not always accessible to most of the population because maybe they are placed in the outskirts of the city and most people live far away from these areas. I think more silent areas, for example, can be found in natural areas. For instance, the Nordic countries in general, like for example, Finland, have a lot of these quiet areas or even silent areas because they have a lot of nature. Maybe I think one thing to highlight here was one of the effects of the lockdown was, during COVID, was the discovery by many people of quiet streets and quiet neighborhoods. We have kind of grown accustomed to unhealthy noise levels in cities because this is what we were used to hearing every day, and we thought that was normal. However, due to the drop in noise as a result of this lockdown, many people started to realize that cities can be a lot quieter and peaceful. And during the lockdown, we could hear other sounds, like, for example, that contribute to a more pleasant soundscape, for example, birds singing, people talking, etc. So, yeah, maybe because also of this experience, I think that maybe we started to trigger more awareness about noise and about the importance of living in quiet environments.
I remember the period.
Yeah.
Is then a noise a threat for public health? What is the consequences of this exposure?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would like to say here that maybe when we think about noise affecting our health, we think about us going into a concert or being close to a machine that it's very loud and which damages our hearing. However, what people don't realize is that being exposed to constant levels of noise from, for instance, traffic that we're accustomed to hear in our neighborhood every day can cause other effects that are not really related to hearing damage. And these effects are serious effects and are effects, for example, like ischemic heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, etc. I mean, other effects, the main important impacts from transportation sources on health are annoyance, sleep disturbance, as I said, diseases related to the cardiovascular system, diseases related to the metabolic system, and also cognitive impairment in children. And yeah, from some of the data that we collect, we estimate that 22 million people in Europe at least suffer chronic high annoyance. 6.5 million people suffer chronic high sleep disturbance due to noise. And in addition, we estimate that environmental noise contributes to 48,000 new cases of ischemic heart disease a year and 12,000 premature deaths.
Wow, there are big numbers. And what is then the effect on the wildlife?
So I'm not an expert on this, but noise pollution can change animal behavior and even can affect their physiology. And this in some cases can lead to reduce reproductive success, higher mortality, and intensified migrations among some animal species. For example, noise can mask important sounds for the animals, for instance, the presence of a predator, or can interfere with finding a mate, or can hide signals that are needed to locate food. And yeah, from our data, we see that there is about 20% of nature protection areas that are covered by Natura 2000 network that are exposed to noise levels that can potentially have negative effects on wildlife.
And is there a legislation in Europe about noise pollution?
Yeah, so I mean, the main piece of European legislation concerning environmental noise is the Environmental Noise Directive. This directive doesn't set any, let's say, thresholds or limits, but obliges countries to submit noise data, and it obliges countries also to develop some action plans that need to that need to address the issue of noise and to protect people affected by noise. And there are also different pieces of EU legislation that countries and manufacturers should comply with. And these are mainly more for regulating noise emissions from vehicles, like the sound levels of the engines and so on. So this is the main EU framework. However, I mean, each country may have some national noise limits, but the situation across Europe is not homogeneous, and it is difficult to tell which countries have a more or less restrictive legislation on noise, because some countries only have recommendations, for example, whilst others may impose some limits only on new infrastructures, etc. However, what I can say, either if the country has recommendations on limits of noise, these are generally well above the levels at which noise starts to be harmful to health. So there is
So,
some work to be
to
done
do.
there.
And what could we do then in order to reduce the noise we make?
So maybe as individuals and citizens, we can switch from using the car, because road traffic noise is one of the main problems. So switching the car and using maybe other modes of transport, for example, active modes of transport such as walking or cycling. Also, if we drive in residential areas, try to drive at a low speed. Or use a hybrid or electric vehicle, or use quiet tires for the car, and certainly not speed up suddenly, especially in the night. Also, maybe for protecting ourselves from noise, for instance, I would say try to sleep or have the bedroom on the quiet side of the building if there is one. And I mean, there are a lot of other actions also that can be done, maybe not from the citizen point of view, but also by relevant stakeholders such as regulators, authorities, industry. And there are many things. No, I mean, first we need more prevention. It seems like we are not doing enough, because there is a tendency to act when the problem is already there. So as for any other field, like prevention is better than mitigation. And secondly, I mean, like the reduction of the number affected by the harmful noise levels is more likely to be achieved by using a combination of different measures that include technological improvements, ambitious environmental and transport policies, and better urban and infrastructure planning, as well as changes in people's behavior.
You think in this field also insulation of houses, which is crucial for energy efficiency, could it help to reduce the noise indoors? Yes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no.
Mm.
The noise that we calculate and the noise which most epidemiological studies have used, it's kind of exterior noise at the most exposed facade of a house. Therefore, we don't have a lot of information on maybe indoor levels. Yeah, and there are very few studies maybe investigating this internal noise and the dose we get from the internal noise. I want to say that the noise indicators that are generally used to represent populations exposure to noise are exterior noise levels, and for example, around airports, highways, and railway lines. Buildings, as you say, may have benefited also from insulation schemes, which may reduce individual exposure to noise. But this type of mitigation measures, like you mentioned, like the insulation, have some shortfalls, as they rely on having windows closed, and do not apply to outdoor spaces, for example, gardens or areas where people go to relax. Therefore, even if buildings are insulated, these measures um, do not change the overall quality of the neighborhood in terms of noise.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing to say is that in terms of mitigation measures, measures that need to be applied in the path or the receptor, which for instance is noise insulation or double glazing windows, etc., are measures that generally are less cost efficient than measures at the source, like would be, for example, reducing the noise of an engine or the noise between the tire and the road, etc. So it's like yes and no.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
And speaking about electric vehicles, I heard an interview about Elon Musk, and he talked about a silent future. And will electric cars help in this sense?
It's also a difficult question. It's, again, yes and no. I mean, only electric cars will not help in reducing noise pollution. For noise, we need something more than changing the current fleet for electric vehicles. And this is because the noise from electric vehicles, when they go above, let's say, 40 kilometers an hour, are as noise polluting as the conventional cars, because the dominant noise above these speeds comes from the tire asphalt interaction. So yeah, we don't get the benefit of the engine noise. So yeah, we see in cities we need something more, and it could be, yes, electric cars can help, but not in isolation. For example, the combination of electric cars accompanied by the reduction of speed limits or reduction of traffic flows could present the improvements. If it's this combination.
Okay, thank you, Eulalia, for your time. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
I invite you all to look at our website, Icona Clima, where you can find the latest findings and news about climate and environmental issues. And have a nice day. Thank you for watching.